Yeah, I mean, shit happens, but that was weird, especially 2 in a row at one point. I'll fix that though. That won't happen again. That was big. That hurt. That's why I'm very upset with myself. You move on.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. I'll better give the Basketball Monster Twitter account a shout out as well, which is at Bask, B-A-S-K, Monster, and we have all real-time updates with anything that's happening with lineup news, actives, inactives, changes to starting stuff, anything that coaches throw out there. Follow that. Put it on your Twitter and set up the notification. So when you want to know when something's happening as it happens, you get a notification on your phone and it will tell you, what's going on. So follow the Basketball Monster account for that. It's at Bask Monster. We are back, or I am back, and we're looking at another day in the NBA, which is always great. A nice day, a 4-game slate, really enables you to sort of get in and watch the games and catch up on everything that's happened. There's a few things we obviously need to talk about in today's action. So
let's get to it.
Okay. Now, before I get on to discussing all the things with the games from Thursday, a few things I want to mention, which I'll talk about a little bit in the DFS section as well, but get them out of the way now. And that is talking about the Brook Lopez situation from yesterday. So an article has come out since I recorded yesterday talking about what Kenny Atkinson is actually doing with Brook Lopez, and the entire Brooklyn Nets team is apparently on a minutes limit. I don't know why, but they're all on a minutes limit at this point, and that's why Lopez only played 21 minutes. It's still inexcusable. It's still inexplicable. You can say that he's on a minutes limit. There's no good reason for these guys aren't hurt. It makes no sense at all. And the more concerning thing with Lopez is the fact that he was marginalized in the offense. Now, in terms of the minutes limit for Lopez, part of that story, and people look at it and go, he's on a minutes limit. And that's true. It's concerning. But a little bit later down in that story, which I think was by Brian Lewis of the New York Post, it was saying, we're going to ramp his minutes up, and it's going to happen really quickly. All right, so that's the second part of it. So he's not going to be playing 20 minutes a night every night. He's going to get his minutes ramped up, and the key thing is really quickly, or pretty quickly is what he said. Kenny Atkinson, that is. So that's good news. Do you still grab Justin Hamilton in 14-team leagues? Yeah, let's see where this goes. He's always had fantasy ability, and we saw it again happening on Wednesday night's games. And we don't know how it's going to play out. He's a better player than Luis Scola at this point. We'll see how that runs with that situation. But that's the story with Lopez. Apparently the whole team's on a minutes limit. That's why we saw Jeremy Lin play, not much. We saw Trevor Booker get 24 minutes. Bojan Bogdanovic played, I think, 24, 25 minutes around that mark as well. So no one was playing big minutes. I don't know. I don't understand why. I don't get the whole principle behind it. It's a very weird thing for a team on opening night to go, yeah, everybody, we're just restricting everyone's minutes. But you know what? Luke Walton also did it with the Lakers too. Everyone was just played limited minutes. And I've said this plenty of times in the preseason, is that we're going to see this a lot more of teams having so much more talent now, and this is part of the reason why the NBA is probably ripe for expansion, is there is so much talent in the league that teams can afford to go not only 10 or 11 deep in their rotation, but play their bench guys big minutes, or run with what's working or what's not. And that you got your group of elite guys, your group of superstars who are going to get their big minutes. But there's going to be other players who, you're just going to spread it out and you're going to get lots of 25s and 24s, and that's going to become more of the reality until expansion does happen. That is going to be the reality in the NBA, that teams are going to start doing this, and it's definitely already happening. The other thing I wanted to clarify, I had a few people push back at me yesterday about talking about Devin Booker, thinking that I don't like him, or why the hate on Devin Booker. I don't hate him. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's already good. My thing that I wanted to bring up with Devin Booker is that when people look at him, they look at him and say, Devin Booker, he's a 3-point gunner. He's a bomber. He's Klay Thompson. He's not. He doesn't shoot as well as Klay Thompson. And the response is he's 19. I know that. I know how old he is. I know how long he's been in the league. But from what we've seen, he's not a good three-point shooter at this point. Probably develops into one. But the main key is he doesn't take shots from there. He doesn't take 55-60% of his shots from three, which is what guys like Kyle Korver, JJ Redick, Klay Thompson do. He doesn't. He takes a significantly lower amount of his shots from there. He scores, and he scores well, and he distributes the ball well. He's got a lot to do on defense, obviously. And I know he's 19, but the idea that he is this long-range three-point bomber, because he came into the league with that perception, he just isn't. He takes his shots, but he takes them from two. He gets closer to the rim. That's the difference, and that's where we should be looking at Devin Booker. He's not a good three-point shooter yet. He probably develops into one, but he's not taking the volume of shots from there either. So that was my clarification on him, because I had people say, why you hate Devin Booker? He's 19. Don't hate him. Like him. Think he's going to be really good. But it's more of a clarification of what type of player he actually is at this point, and he's not the bloke that goes out there and bombs 65% of his shots from three and converts them at 39%. He was a below-average three-point shooter last season. More Phoenix Suns news. Rotation's changed already. Leandro Barbosa, PJ Tucker out of the rotation. Replaced by Tyler Ulis and Dragan Bender. Talked about Bender a bit yesterday. Ulis looked pretty decent as well. So those guys are going to be getting consistent minutes now. Great for their development. Great for you guys in dynasty leagues or deeper formats. They're not going to have a huge role at this point. You're probably talking 10, 12, maybe 14, 15 minutes at most for these guys. But at some point, you're going to see a lot more Marquise Chris and Dragan Bender, and Jared Dudley loses some of those minutes. Dragan Bender's going to play the three, which Earl Watson's been harping on a lot in preseason as well. So you're going to see Bender in the rotation each night. You're going to see Tyler Ulis in the rotation each night. And you're going to see Barbosa and PJ Tucker in garbage time. Now, Earl Watson changed after one night. So his assessment through preseason, not up to scratch. He's not a good coach. This is breaking news. He's not a good coach. But that's the way that he viewed things. And he's changed it. He could always go back and change it again. But I imagine with a team that's young and developing, you're not going to just be moving these guys in and out all that crazily unless they're just doing stuff to completely piss you off, which I guess is possible. But at this point, we're not at that stage for the Suns. So good to know we've got those guys in the lineup, in the rotation, and ready to rock and roll. We're ready to rock and roll with the action here from Thursday, and let's talk about the monstrous line of the night. Of course, it goes to Boogie Cousins, who had 37 points. He drained 3 3-pointers. He had 16 rebounds. He went 10 of 22 from the field, and probably most importantly for you people who avoided Boogie Cousins in drafts because he kills your percentages, he went 14 of 16 from the free throw line. He was really good in the opening game yesterday as well from the free throw line. And I've said this before as well, that we've seen that he can be a good free throw shooter. He can be a good free throw shooter. It's only 2 games, but he's done it so far, so that's obviously a good sign. He had 16 boards, 2 assists, 1 steal, and no blocks. A huge performance from Boogie Cousins, and he gets the monstrous line of the night. I'm glad that I've got him in fantasy leagues. The concern with the percentages, I understand. Look, he was only 45% from the field in this one, but the free throws is really good. It's really encouraging, and we've seen him do that before. We've seen him be better in his field goal percentage before. He seems to enjoy playing for Dave Yeager. The Kings put up a huge fight in this one. Back-to-back game against the Spurs. Yes, it was their new arena opening, so there was a little bit of extra kick and motivation. They were out playing the Spurs for a big chunk, but it's a huge effort against the Spurs on the second half of a back-to-back to put up that effort, and they're going to be a decent team, I think. Maybe not, probably not a playoff team, but they're putting up some fight, and Boogie looked good while he was doing it, and he's really, really good. I know that's not news to anybody. The waiver wire line of the night, we head to Atlanta and we look at Thabo Sefolosha, who was great. 13, 7, and 5. He hit a 3, but importantly, he had 5 steals. He went 6 of 8 from the field, including some vicious dunks from Thabo. He missed both his free throws, but we'll give him a pass on that one. The interesting thing to me with the Hawks is that Thabo and Tim Hardaway Jr. comfortably outplayed the starters, Kyle Korver and Kent Bazemore. And this is not breaking news to you people listening to this podcast who have listened before. I don't think Kent Bazemore's good. Thabo Sefolosha started over him last season when Thabo was dealing with the effects of that broken leg still. Will Thabo start over Kent Bazemore this year after him having just recently signed a big contract? Probably not. But Bazemore didn't look good. Thabo looked great. Kyle Korver didn't look good. Hardaway looked great. Now, Hardaway's looked great once in his career, and that was today, maybe. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but he's not that good. But he was certainly better than what Kyle Korver was. He was hitting his threes, he looked engaged, and would anyone be surprised if the Hawks were able to resurrect his career? Nope. I don't think we would be. Thabo is completely energized, and this is what we're talking about Thabo here. He's completely energized and engaged. Korver was a guy I wanted nothing to do with in standard league drafts, and Bazemore was as well, to be honest. I'm not a big Bazemore fan. I've told you this plenty of times. And Thabo could eat into his minutes, as could Tim Hardaway Jr. this season. Plus, there's Taurean Prince and DeAndre Bembry, who are out of the rotation at the moment, but they're around too. Don't believe that Bazemore is a good player. I will be proven wrong at some point probably on him, but the way that Thabo played, in 14-team leagues, you've got to use him. He's going to get 20-plus minutes, 23, 24 a night. He's going to rebound really well for a shooting guard. He gets his hands on steals. He can hit a couple of threes, and when he has these sort of nights, it works out really well for you. So Thabo Sefolosha is your waiver wire line of the night. Now, with only 4 games on, there wasn't a real standout young gun of the night, but we're giving the award to Terry Rozier anyway because he was good. He was good. I think that's the best way of phrasing it. 8, 4, and 4 for Rozier. He hit 2 triples, he had 2 steals, and he went 3 of 7 from the field. So not a mind-blowing performance. He's taken over some of Marcus Smart's role. I think that what we've seen from Rozier over the first 2 games is he's solid, but he's going to be no threat to Marcus Smart when he comes back. Look, he played 27 in the first game, mid to low 20s in this one. Did some stuff, but the Celtics got killed rebounding-wise, got killed defensively against the Bulls. Second half of a back-to-back, but they need Marcus Smart, and Marcus Smart's going to come back, and once his ankle's fine, which we're looking at about a week here at this point, he's going to play his 30 minutes. Rozier is not taking his role off him. I'm pretty confident in saying that, and Jaylen Brown's not taking that role off him either. But Rozier is someone you look at. He has some long-term potential, but is he anything more than a backup point guard in the NBA? I don't know. He's improved a significant amount. This was a nice performance, but not really blowing up, not really blowing the house. That's not the right phrase. Not really burning. You know what I mean? He's not doing great stuff. He's doing okay stuff, but not great stuff. But a nice performance from Tez. The dart of the night. I was down on this guy as well heading into the season, and with pretty good reason, I think. And this is, again, it's one game, so let's not get too excited about it. 8 points with 1 triple for JJ Redick. 3 rebounds, 1 assist, and he went 3 of 8 from the field. Not a great performance. It's not a terrible performance, but when I look at the dud of the night, who's owned in leagues who put up the worst performance? And it was JJ. I thought he was going to be in line for a minutes restriction, or not a restriction, a drop in his minutes, because with all the injuries they had last season, especially to Blake Griffin, where in the past he's thrived in that situation, Redick only played 28 a night. He's getting older. They've got Ray Felton in there now, which I'm sure is great comfort to the Clippers. Austin Rivers, Jamal Crawford, all who can play his position. You still hold on to Redick now, but by the time we hit mid-November, I think Kyle Korver's already droppable, but Redick could be in that role of, or in that realm of being someone that you look at dropping. Not a great start for JJ. He'll be better. I'm not overreacting to one performance because I said this stuff pre-season, but it was not an encouraging thing for him to come out and do what he did, and for me to go, "Oh, maybe I was wrong," because at the moment it wasn't the best performance from Mr. Redick. Let's get into look at these box scores now for these games. Knock them out in a little bit more detail. The first one of those games was the Washington Wizards and the Atlanta Hawks. Big Markieff Morris. Actually, as a whole, the Washington Wizards look terrible. You know what I forgot to do? It's a new segment. The bonehead coaching decision of the day. Maybe I should call it the dickhead of the night. I don't know. It ties into this first game because it is the Washington Wizards and Scotty Brooks. Now, Scotty Brooks. You know that I've been waiting for Tomas Satoransky to come over. Maybe you don't. Plenty of people have been waiting for Tomas Satoransky to come over. Tomas Satoransky outplayed both Marcus Thornton and Trey Burke in preseason. Tomas Satoransky can play the 1, he can play the 2, he can play the 3. He's better than Thornton, he's better than Burke, he's better than Kelly Oubre. But, Scotty Brooks, we remember why you got fired in Oklahoma City. Unhealthy reliance on veterans who aren't good. Nick Collison, Kendrick Perkins. It's not the same situation here of these guys starting like Thornton, but Marcus Thornton played 20 minutes. Marcus Thornton was good 9 years ago for half a year. That's it. He doesn't need to be playing 20 minutes. Tomas Satoransky should be the backup 1, and he should be the backup 2. Now, Trey Burke was decent. He was definitely not spectacular, and he's never going to be spectacular. Your bench was atrocious. The Wizards' bench was dreadful, and you had a guy on the bench who could actually stop that. He can create, he can shoot, he can jump, he's athletic, and he can defend. Burke can't do all those things. Thornton can't do all those things. Satoransky needs to be in this rotation, Scotty. A terrible decision. Wizards fans, I know, will agree with me. Wizards writers agree with me. The only person who doesn't seem to think that's a good idea is Scotty Brooks. And that's why he's your bonehead coaching decision of the day. I was going to go with the Chicago Bulls and Fred Hoiberg, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But you got to get Satoransky in there. Let's talk Wizards. Markieff. It's big on him in preseason, and I'm pretty happy that I was. He dropped 22 in 28 minutes. He had a couple of steals, he had a block, he had 2 threes, and he was the focal point of this team offensively. He took 18 shots, more than anybody on the team, and again, in only 28 minutes. I think he's a steal where he was able to be got in drafts, and he's only owned in 71% of leagues. So that means he's available. And someone tweeted at me today, should I add Markieff Morris? Someone also tweeted at me today, should I drop him? Why? Why would you drop him after this? He should be owned. He's a key part of this team. Johnny Wall, not great shooting, 3 of 15, but he still had 10 dimes, 3 rebounds, 4 steals, a block, and he ended up with 12 points. So, in the end, not a bad performance. If you had John Wall, you know that there's going to be shooting issues, and if you draft him, you know that. But what you drafted him for was steals and assists, and you got it. Don't complain. Pretty good night. Otto Porter, I was a decent fan of Porter, but not really anymore. 26 for him, 10 and 6 with 2 steals. He just does what he does, and he's falling into that Luol Deng mode of a guy who might be ranked between 100 and 120, who's just got no upside to go past that. He's a hold for now, but let's just see how that works out. Kelly Oubre played 22 minutes behind him and had 5 points. He'll be better than that, but I don't know by how much. And Brad Beal, only the 24 minutes for Beal. Now, it wasn't injury-related, thankfully. He did have 4 fouls, so that limited his playing time. And he looked okay. He had 4 assists. He had 13 points. But he had no rebounds, no steals, no blocks, no threes. Not a good night from Brad Beal. Marcin Gortat got 4 and 11 with a steal and a block. He only got the 32 minutes without another backup center on the roster, so that's a little bit concerning that when Mahinmi comes back, Gortat's going to get cut back, and he's going to get cut back pretty significantly, I think. Andrew Nicholson, the big story here, he had a 1-1, 19 minutes, 9 and 7. He played backup center. He played as the first big man off the bench for this team, as the 6th man on this team, basically, Andrew Nicholson did. And we've seen that he's had moments in Orlando where he can get hot, and then he can get skiles and not seen for 50 games. He's got an opportunity here to maintain a role as a 6th man on this team, play 20 a night, and be useful for 14 to 16 team leagues. You get 9 and 7 with a 1-1 in a 16 team league, you're laughing. If you get that in a 14 team league, you'd be pretty happy with it. You know, Jason Smith's not better than him. He's not taking his role. Mahinmi will, but we're talking four weeks away probably at this moment. And that's the concern. But Nicholson looked good. Not much else was really good for the Wizards. The Wizards-Hawks game, someone tweeted out at about 10 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, League Pass alert, Hawks, Wizards, 1 point the difference. I was watching it, so I didn't need to switch over. About 2 minutes to go, there was 20 points the difference. The Hawks just steamrolled them, and it was just like, shit, this Hawks team is either good or this Wizards team's really bad, and it's probably a bit of both. But the Hawks just pounded them into the ground. They just were executing like nobody's business. Let's talk about the Hawks. Paulie Millsap, great stuff. 31 minutes, 28, 7 and 6, 1 block, 0 steals. Now, A lot of his value at the end of last season was buoyed by his defensive numbers, his steals and blocks. That was always going to be the concern for me with Dwight Howard, that he wouldn't get his blocks and he wouldn't get his rebounds. Only 7 boards here, but 6 assists is obviously great. So he's taking on some of the big man playmaking role that Al Horford had last year and scored 28, hit 3 threes, did that at 50% as well, and that's a little bit fluky. But Millsap's great. I still never would have picked him in the first round. To me, he was a late second rounder, and I still reserve some concern that there might be some decline, but he looked awesome here. Who else looked awesome? Dwight Howard. 19 rebounds, 11 points. He had 3 blocks and a steal. He actually went 3 or 4 from the free throw line as well. I said there was going to be a bounce back from Dwight. He's done nothing to dissuade me from that. In a punt free throw situation, he's going to provide you top 40 value, maybe top 20 value. That's a possibility with Dwight. Huge start for him. The interesting thing that the Hawks did is a guy who was on the roster bubble, Mike Muscala, probably was going to get cut until Jarrett Jack got waived, was the first man off the bench. He was the 6th man for this team. So he jumped ahead of Chris Humphries. He pushed Eddie Tavares out of the rotation completely. Now, does he hold on to that role when Mike Scott comes back? I'm convinced he's the best player out of the lot. And I've said this before, and if you go back to the chat I had with Bob Rathbun back in September maybe, I said I really think this guy's the best big man on this team. They just never seem to give, or best backup big on this team, they don't give him a go. And he can produce. He went 9-4-1. He had 2 steals, 3 blocks, and a 3-pointer. Well, Thiago Splitter's out. If he's coming off the bench and playing 25 minutes, 14 teamers, 16 teamers, look at him. He's in the rotation. He is that guy. Chris Humphries only played 9 minutes. Eddie Tavares didn't get in at all. He was ready to check in with about 20 seconds left, but never got an opportunity to come in. He's better than these guys. Mike Scott's dealing with a knee problem. He's better than Mike Scott. Definitely someone to watch. Timmy Hardaway, great night, 21, 2 and 1. But that's the thing with Hardaway. It's all points. He had 3 triples, but he does nothing else. And when he's not shooting 62% from the field, how much value is he going to have? And he shot 62% here, but how often is that going to happen with Hardaway? I'd have to venture a guess and say never. But he looked awesome, and I said he was better than Kyle Korver. He was better than Kent Bazemore, and they both struggled. So there's going to be nights when he does play more minutes, but he's comfortably in the rotation. He played some backup point guard minutes as well. Speaking of backup point guard, Malcolm Delaney got 20 minutes, 4 points, but he had 5 assists and a steal, so that was a nice performance from him in his first outing. Great deep league guy. And Dennis Schroeder, only the 25 minutes, he battled some early foul trouble as well. 14, 2 and 2. People are a bit panicky. Only 2 assists, should I panic? No, let's just wait more than one game before panicking, because Dennis Schroeder only had 2 assists. He only got the 25 minutes, but it is foul trouble induced. He hit 2 triples. He was 50% from the field. He looked pretty good, I thought. And I'm not worried about Malcolm Delaney taking huge chunks of minutes off him. A nice performance from Schroeder. It can obviously be better, but 14, 2 and 2 with a steal is a nice night. Now, Kent Bazemore, 7, 3 and 1. He was 1 of 7 from the field. He'll be a better shooter than that, but he's not a good shooter. I don't know what more to say. I've exhausted my words on Kent Bazemore. Kyle Korver, 5, 3 and 4 in only 22 minutes. A definite worrying trend. He will be better than this. I've got no doubt he'll be better than this, but it wasn't like he was shooting poorly. He was 2 of 4 from the field. He wasn't, ice cold. They just went with other options. And at his age, it could happen a bit more often. So, Kyle Korver owners, all 76% of you, Kyle Korver's owned in 76% of leagues and Markieff Morris is owned in 71. Fix it. Korver is not a top 100 player. I don't think he's a top 150 player. He'll have some decent games, but there's going to be more of this than the good stuff as we move forward. All right, the next game. The Boston Celtics and the Chicago Bulls. Second half of back-to-back for the Celtics. They lost. We'll talk about the Bulls in a second, but the Celtics couldn't grab rebounds. They got out-rebounded 55-36. It's a massive discrepancy. Avery Bradley on the second half of back-to-back played 41 minutes. They needed his defense. That is why they missed Marcus Smart, because they had to keep Bradley out there. Bradley went 16, 6 and 5, so the assists are back for him. So this could be a really nice year for him. Isaiah Thomas was good too. 25, 3 and 4 with 2 steals and 3 triples. A good night for Thomas. And Jay Crowder didn't quite back up his huge performance from the opening night, but 14 and 6 with a 3 and a steal is solid value. Al Horford, people are panicking about Al Horford. 11, 7 and 5 with a block, only 30 minutes. We know what Brad Stevens does with big men, and he did it again in this game. Horford's going to have limited opportunities. He's going to have less shots than what he did in Atlanta. But what he's doing is he's creating more, he's passing more, he's never been a big rebounder. And let's see how the blocks go. 1 in this game, 4 in the other game. People are a bit panicky about Horford. His ADP was one of the most ridiculous heading into the season anyway, sitting at 20. I told you that until your ears bled. There's no way that I want to draft him at pick 20. And so far, he's sitting outside the top 50 in value. And again, it's 2 games, but it's not a worrying trend. I still think he's going to settle around that 40 zone, but he's not a second-round player. Jaylen Brown just is so fun to watch, but it doesn't really translate into stats. 8 points in 20 minutes, not a lot there. And Amir Johnson started this first half, at least 16 minutes for 5 points, a steal and a block. And then Tyler Zeller started the second half. And this is what Brad Stevens does. The big men just get jerked around. We had Jonas Jerebko, who went from 18 minutes down to 10 minutes. When Kelly Olynyk comes back, it's going to be more of a mess. Zeller, Johnson, Jerebko, Olynyk, they're not worth owning in 12-team leagues. They're probably not worth owning in 14-team leagues at this point, because this is just the way that Brad Stevens does it. He constantly changes his mind on what these guys are going to do, and they never can get set into a set pattern. The Bulls. My Chicago Bulls. The Splash Alphas. Dwayne Wade hit 4 of 6 from three-point range. Last season, I believe he hit 7 three-pointers for the season. Jim Butler went 4 of 6 from three-point range. They also shot less than 40% from the field, so it is as fluky as a performance as you could get. Butler also went 8 of 12 from the free throw line. As fluky a shooting performance as you could ever get from both of these guys. Wade was great, 22, 6, and 5, 1 block, facilitating, looked great out there. The problem with him is going to be games missed, but he looked good, and the threes aren't going to come like that. He will obviously shoot more threes this season and shoot them better. He won't do it like this, though. Butler went 24, 7, and 3 with 2 steals, a nice performance from Jim. Rondo, he hit a 3. He also hunted for assists like the selfish prick that he is. And that sounds stupid when you're hunting for assists because you're passing it up to someone else. But he gives up easy shots so he can get assists, so he can come in and go, you know what? I average double-digit assists. I'm the king. I led the league in assists. And it works because people say that. But Rondo averaged double-digit assists. Doesn't mean he's good. They didn't run with him as in the finishing lineup, in the closing lineup. And I think that's good. 4, 6... Actually, did they run... Maybe they did run. They kept him out down the stretch at times anyway, to run with Wade and Butler in there. Rondo, 4, 6, and 9. So he got his assists, he got his 2 steals, he got his rebounds. He went 1 of 9 from the field. It's just Rondo. That's who he is. Now, Taj Gibson started over Nikola Mirotic, and he was great. 18 and 10 in 28 minutes. No defensive numbers, but high field goal percentage, and he's probably a 12-team league guy with limited upside. But Nikola Mirotic played more minutes than him. And the general consensus across Twitter was Nikola Mirotic is playing terribly. Yet he had 15 and 9 and hit a 3 and shot 55% from the field. He went 1 of 6 from threes, but he was taking guys off the dribble, spin moves, and I will defend Mirotic not until I die, until I give up. He's a better player than Taj Gibson. He's one of the best players on this team. He needs to play. He put in a good performance. If he's available on your waiver wire, which is possible, you need to add him. You should add Gibson as well, but Mirotic played more than Gibson in this one. Robin Lopez was limited, and they went with a Mirotic and Taj Gibson lineup down the stretch as well. Lopez, 27 minutes, 8 and 8. I think this is what you're going to get from him. You might get some 10-point nights, you might get some 2-block nights, and that will happen, but you're not getting 30-plus minutes out of Robin Lopez. You're going to get good percentages, but you're going to have limited situations like this in terms of his playing time. I talked about the bonehead coaching decision of the night and how the Bulls were in contention for that. First man off the bench, guard-wise, was Isaiah Cannon. You know who's a terrible basketball player? Isaiah Cannon. He played 7 minutes and went scoreless. He missed all 3 of his threes. And I've mentioned this on Twitter, but they need a shooter. Do you know what he is? Not a good shooter. He shoots threes. He doesn't hit them at a high rate. He shouldn't be in the rotation. He came in ahead of Michael Carter-Williams. He came in, or he played, and Denzel Valentine didn't play at all. That needs to change immediately. Cannon should not play at all in the next game, and Valentine needs to be in the rotation ahead of him. And Valentine was clear to go. There was no restrictions on him whatsoever. The only restriction he had was his coach was a numbnuts. Carter-Williams only played the 17 minutes because Cannon came in ahead of him. And again, they needed shooting, but Cannon can't shoot. He's not a good shooter. He's a willing shooter. He's not a good one. Carter Williams went 5, 6, and 3. He's clearly not a 12-team league guy anymore, maybe a 14-team league guy. That's about where he sits. And Cristiano Felicio is in the rotation over Bobby Portis, and plenty of you will be screaming that that's the wrong decision. It is absolutely the right decision. Felicio is the better player at this point. Yeah, Portis does have more potential, but Felicio is a better player, and he showed that over pre-season. If you own Portis in a 12-team league, why? That needs to end straight away. In a 14-team league, you can move on from Portis. Yeah, dynasty-wise, stash him, yep, great. But it's just not happening at this point. And Dougie McDermott, 21 minutes, 5 points, nothing else. That is a stock-standard Doug McDermott line. Let's look at the Clippers and the Portland Trailblazers. Blake Griffin was great. 27 and 13, 2 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 1 3. Not a great field goal percentage, but a fantastic night from Blake. Chrissy Paul went 27, 5 and 5 with a steal and a 3. And DeAndre Jordan struggled. Not surprisingly, 2 of 10 from the line, but only 2 of 7 from the field. 6 and 12 there with 1 block, so not his best performance, and it was a really good opportunity for him to put up a big night. Got in a few punch-ons with Mason Plumlee. Luke Marmute, that is as Luke Marmute a line as you could get, 17 minutes for 1 point and 3 rebounds. Jamal Crawford dropped in 15 and had 4 steals in 26 minutes. He also shot the ball horrendously, took 12 shots and only made 3 of them, and as usual is a poor defender. 1 of 6 from 3 for Crawford. I like him as a streaming option maybe for leagues, but nothing more than that. Austin Rivers had 8 and 4 in 26 minutes. We saw no Brandon Bass. He's out of the rotation as expected. Wes Johnson only 12 minutes. Criminal. And Mo Spates dropped 15 in 16 minutes. This is what Mo Spates does. He goes up there and he jacks shots, and some nights it'll come off and he'll get some good scoring, and if you're just desperate for points, you can look at adding him on a one-off basis, but it's not sustainable that he's going to be getting 15 points. He's not going to go a point a minute for the rest of the season. It's not going to happen, so don't rely upon that. Now, after playing 14 minutes in the opener, Mason Plumlee played 31 here. 17, 8, and 4 with 3 blocks. I was really down on him heading into this game. Said, look, I don't like the matchup. But Terry Stotts went with him, and he put up big numbers. Now, he is the most talented out of all their big men. My issue with Plumlee is reliability in what they're going to do, because they've got other options. They can go with Ed Davis. They can go with Vonleh. They can go with Myers Leonard, who didn't see the court at all in this game. And they can go with Festus Ezeli when he comes back. But Plumlee, a really good performance, obviously should be owned until further notice. Mo Harkless with a huge night, 23, 8, and 2 after he went scoreless in the first game. What do we make of that? It's good. It is good. But he is going to be sharing minutes with Evan Turner. He's going to be sharing them with Alan Crabb. So does he play 32 each night and get 23? Absolutely no way. But can he be better than what he was in the opener? No doubt. Is he a 12-team league guy? I guess that depends on how your team looks and what else is available. He's borderline to me, but a nice night. 29 and 10 for Dame with 2 threes and 3 assists only. Not a good performance there. While CJ McCollum had 16, 4 and only 2 assists with 3 steals. So a good effort to get the steals from McCollum, but definitely not an efficient night for him. Only took 1 3-point attempt, McCollum, and he's definitely, for 2 games, he hasn't shot many threes. So that's an interesting development. Al-Farouq Aminu struggling, 1 and 8 in 25 minutes. We saw Alan Crabb get some of his minutes. We saw Harkless get some of them as well. So that's a bit of a concern for Aminu. I'm still holding him if I've got him, but we won't let it last too long. And Noah Vonleh, after a big opening night, went back to being Noah Vonleh, 6 points in 10 minutes. The San Antonio Spurs and the Sacramento Kings. Kawhi was great, 33 and 5 with 5 steals. You had to watch a stretch there in the fourth quarter on Ben McLemore. In 15 seconds, McLemore had the ball, and twice Kawhi just said, nah, can I just have it? Well, you didn't even say it. He just took it, and he said, I'm just taking the ball, and I'm just going down the other end and scoring. He's a defensive animal. 30 points back-to-back games for the first time in his career. Huge night from Kawhi. The rest of the Spurs. Tone Parker. He was looking at about a 20 trillion at one point. He ended up with 4 points, 2 assists and 1 steal. There is no reason you should own Tony Parker in standard leagues as a general rule. He was worth an investment with his 4-game week for the Spurs now, but they've got a back-to-back on the weekend, but yeah, look, you've got 2 out of him. You might want to move on to something else. Patty Mills was okay. I don't think Mills is an ad. 6 points with 2 threes. Aldridge, 16 and 5, was inefficient and he struggled. Kyle Anderson was better. 2 points only, but 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. And that's why we liked Kyle Anderson, for his ability to get some assists, to get steals, and to do some of those other things, not necessarily to score. And Tuesday's Wonder Boy, everyone's boyfriend, Jonathan Simmons. He had 5 points in 18 minutes, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. the perfect example why we don't get overexcited by a guy who does stuff uncharacteristically in his first game and goes out there and shoots 85% and does stuff that we've sort of seen, but never to this degree. And it's always worth just picking these guys up. But the path for him to get minutes, for him to jump over Danny Green, was never clear-cut. And Green's not there, but Simmons he's not that good yet. And he might become that, and he definitely has a lot of talent and a lot of ability. But this 18 minutes is not what you want from the guy that you've got and is your number one waiver guy. And this is why you don't panic and make dumb moves. But Pau Gasol, 21 minutes for Pau here. He had a 1-1, so that's good. He had 7 points and 6 rebounds. He looked as lost and as out of place as anyone I've seen in a very long time. He's had some bad matchups. The Warriors is not a good one. Boogie Cousins, also not a good one. I believe the Spurs have got the Pelicans next. So Anthony Davis, I'm not sure how that's going to go for Pau. He's getting killed. Now, I avoided him in all drafts. I knew that he'd drop his minutes down, and I was concerned because I said that the best situation they've got is to get Dwayne Dedmon into the game. And that's why, because he went 12-7 with 4 blocks, Dwayne Dedmon. He won the Spurs this game, him and Kawhi. It was them that won them the game. He's really good. Is he worth looking at in a 12-team league? Maybe. How long until Popovich just says, we're playing Dedmon down the stretch in every game and he's going to be playing more than Pau? I'm not sure that Pop does that just yet. And Dedmon's going to be up and down. We know this. But he's better. He's a better option for what they need. Gasol Aldridge is a terrible defensive pairing. Terrible. And Dedmon's a really good defender, a really good rim protector, a solid finisher, a good free throw shooter as well. And he looked great in this game. Really, really kept the Spurs going. 14, 16 team leaguers, you absolutely need to get Dwayne Dedmon. He's going to have a role like this most nights. Dave Lee was good, actually. 12-5 in 16 minutes with 2 steals and a block. He's behind Dedmon in my list of guys that I'd pick up. And Manu just did what Manu does. 19 minutes, 8, 3, and 5. And I always say it with Manu, you want assists just short term until something goes wrong with him. He's going to give you these out of position assists. You're going to get 4.5 assists even in 20 minutes from Manu. It's what he does. Him and Dedmon had a great connection. It helped Dedmon a lot. Manu looked awesome. And the guy's like 40 years old. He looked awesome. The Kings, Rudy Gay, the Rondo stink, is gone. 17-7-2 with 2 steals and a 3. Not a good shooting night from Gay, but we're definitely seeing a bounce back year from him. Ty Lawson's not getting involved offensively. 7 points, and he was in single digits in the first game. But 4 boards, 9 assists, 1 steal. He looks pretty into it. He looks pretty explosive. He has to be owned. He's only owned in 13% of leagues, and I don't really understand why. He has to be owned, because maybe he does keep the job off Darren Collison, or, as Dave Yeager has said, we're going to play him together. Because you know who's at shooting guard for the Kings? Guys who are bad. Aaron Aflalo is actively bad. 7 points for him in 36 minutes. He's bad. Ben McLemore, who I do like, got 10 points in 10 minutes. He's not playing enough. Garrett Temple. If Aaron Aflalo is actively bad, I don't know how to describe Garrett Temple. He's horrendous. He played 12 minutes. There is the opportunity for Darren Collison and Ty Lawson to play 30 a game each. Now, defensively, that could be a real issue, but Aaron Aflalo is not a good defender anymore. Garrett Temple's a pretty good defender, and Ben McLemore's not a good defender. So how much are we losing out here, especially when you consider how much are we losing out to have those kids playing on offense, because it's not good. Omri Caspi out of the rotation. Matty Barnes is definitely ahead of him, although Barnes was not the first big man to come into this game. It was Willie Cauley-Stein, and he's not good at this point. Shouldn't be anywhere near your 12-team leagues at the moment. 3 points for Cauley-Stein in 11 minutes, maybe even 14-team leagues. I don't have a huge amount of faith in him long-term. Barnesy, not a great night, but he played 27 minutes. That's the important thing. He's getting those upper 20 minutes in both games. 3 points, 1 assist, 1 steal. I don't think that he's out of place on a 12-team league roster. Costa Koufos played 24 minutes, more than the other night, and I really like Koufos. I don't know how well he goes next to Boogie, but as a Boogie replacement, he's good. 8 and 7 for him in 24 minutes. He's a name to watch. He's a name to consider as we move forward. All right, that is the games done. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to transition into daily fantasy stuff straight after that break. Just noticed we've got a massive sunlight mark coming across that Boogie Cousins jersey. I'm trying to block this sun out, but this sun is just coming in at crazy angles at the moment. So at least it's not right across my face, or I wouldn't be able to see. But I apologise for that big white light there across that Boogie jersey down the bottom. Let's talk about the perfect DFS lineup from Thursday. We're not talking about scores of 470 that we saw in Wednesday's action. Much more subdued. As we predicted when we looked at the slate, they're going to be much lower scores. I hope you guys are able to cash. I had a pretty decent tournament. My tournament lineups are coming out way better than my cash lineups at the moment. A nice finish for me. They're thinking the top 50 over on Moneyball, so I was happy with that. On FanDuel, your perfect lineup gave you Terry Rozier at 22.8 and Ty Lawson at 26.3. Two players that I highlighted yesterday. Dwayne Wade at 35.7, Avery Bradley at 30.7. At the small forward position, Thabo Sefolosha at 37.9. No one saw that sort of sized explosion coming. Kawhi at 50.1. Millsap at 45.5 and Blakey Griffin at 51.4. So the big names up front, which is where you needed to spend your money, they came through. And Boogie with 58.2. That gave you 358.5. So a nice amount of points there. Not talking 470 like the day before. On DraftKings, you had Timmy Hardaway Jr. at 26.5, Jim Butler at 43.25, Kawhi 51.25, Boogie 63.5, and Mace Plumlee at 38. Avery Bradley had 32.5, Thabo at 39.25, and Blake at 54.5. So a lot of cross similarity. The only guys in the DraftKings lineup that weren't in the FanDuel one is Hardaway and Plumlee. That DraftKings lineup gave you 348.75. All right, so let's look at the first game for Friday's action, and it is an interesting one, I think. The Cleveland Cavaliers and Toronto Raptors. The Cavs are favored by 2.5. It's in Toronto. The total is a mediocre, I guess, 203.5. There's some value to be had here. Now, Tristan Thompson laid a turd in the first game, only 5 points, but he's only at 4,400. Actually, let's look at injuries first. Injuries, the only one we're really looking at here is Bebe Nogueira going to play. I don't think that has much of an impact. On the Cavs side of things, Iman Shumpert is likely to play after suffering those concussion-like symptoms, and Kay Felder, who did have a concussion in preseason, he is going to play. Now, Tristan Thompson at 4,400, I don't mind it in a tournament. In a cash game, it's a little bit unreliable. I did that completely out of order. Keep that Thompson information for later. Let's talk point guards. Kyle Lowry. He's priced at 7,700. It's a nice matchup for him against Kyrie. I don't have a huge amount of faith in Kyle Lowry. I know that I'm probably in the minority. At 7,700, it's not bad value. It's worth looking at, but it's not something that I'm overly interested in when looking at cash games. Kyrie at 7,500. I feel more confident in Kyrie, despite the Raptors' pretty good defense at that position and Lowry being a good defender. I feel more confident in Kyrie. He dropped 41 in opening night, and at 7,500, $200 less than Lowry. I would rather take Kyrie there. Corey Joseph, he just doesn't do a huge... He gets the minutes, but he just doesn't do anything with them. He's at minimum salary, not interested. And Kay Felder in his NBA debut, whether he actually sees the court or not, I would say he does, because they don't have really any other point guards, and Iman Shumpert's not a point guard. But let's see how Felder does before we start using him. Really, he'd be a deep punt option in a tournament. These shooting guards, J.R. Smith at 4,400. Not the best night for him, but I reckon you can. I think you should look at J.R. Smith in a tournament and consider him there. Not much more than that, though. DeMar DeRozan at 7,800. Is he going to go drop 40 again? Probably not. He had 42 points in that first game. At 7,800, I reckon we can spend our money in other areas. Iman Shumpert, no. Norm Powell, not seeing the court really, so not a lot to really like at the shooting guard position here. Small forward Damari Carroll, he's at 4,500. He didn't do much in the opener, but had 20, and at 4,500, that's almost where he needs to be for value. So with him getting healthier by the day, now the problem is he's going to be matched up against LeBron, and that's a bit of a concern. But at 4,500, I don't think you should be completely steering away. LeBron at 9,900, yeah, great. He can torch this team. Carroll can't really stop him. It is 10,000 for LeBron, but there are some cheaper options you can get in some other positions to help make that work, and I like LeBron. I don't know if he's going to drop a triple-double again and go 50 points, but I think you can get high 40s out of him without feeling too nervous. Terrence Ross, minimum salary, yeah, the minutes are definitely there for him as a backup, but probably not. Richard Jefferson, Mike Dunleavy, they got extended run when Felder was out, or as Felder was out, and then when Iman Shumpert went down, so they got some extra run. I'm not all that interested to think that they're going to get 20 plus minutes again, which they got in that first game, so not really too interested in using either of those two fossils. At power forward, Pascal Siakam, he played 22 minutes, which was much more than we expected. He's priced at 3,900, and he had 17 points in his NBA debut. Dwayne Casey's playing funny buggers with us. No, I don't know who's going to start. Again, he's doing it. No, Siakam's not necessarily going to start. I think Siakam is going to continue to start. I think he's going to continue to get around this sort of playing time, but it's not a good situation for him going up against the Cavs with uncertainty surrounding him. Kevin Love was awesome in Game 1. He's at 7,100. I could consider looking at him, but I'm not overly keen on it just because the Raptors are obviously a different animal than playing against the Knicks. So he's not high on my list. Patrick Patterson's the opposite of high, and Channing Frye is not really under consideration. Now back to Tristan Thompson. Decent tournament option. I don't think many people go for him, but I like the other side. I like Jonas Valanciunas, who's at $6,000. He dropped a 46 in the first one. 6,000, look, it's gone up. It's gone up by 300. It's still not an overly high price. Can he get to 30? Yeah, I think he can get to 30 and exceed 30. So I like using Valanciunas here. Even if Nogueira plays, I don't think we're looking at him and Birdman and Jakob Poeltl. That goes without saying that we're not interested in using those guys. The next game, the Indiana Pacers and the Brooklyn Nets. Pacers are favored by 6.5, and we've got a massive total, 214.5. The Nets bombed 44 three-pointers in their opening game against the Nets. We know what the Pacers did. There's going to be some decent value to look at here. Let's look at the point guards. What do we do with the Nets? They're all on minutes restrictions, are they? Jeremy Lin played only 28 minutes. He had 26 points, but he's at 6,200. Do you think that Jeremy Lin can get to 6,200? Jeff Teague's not a good defender. It's a high-paced game. Can Lin get there? Yeah. Do I trust Atkinson? No. So cash game value is not there for me with Lin. On the flip side, Teague, it's a really good matchup for him. He's at 6,300. I would rather spend the 63 on Teague than the 62 on Lin. Not sure that Teague is going to get the 20 points and 8 assists that he had in the first one against Dallas, but I think he is definitely worth looking at. General Grievous Vasquez got minutes in the 20s. He didn't produce. No thanks. Aaron Brooks or Joe Young, we don't know who's going to be the backup, but they're not going to have enough of an impact to care about. At shooting guard, Monte Ellis dropped 41. Do we think that he can repeat that? No, but at 6,100, can he get 30 again against the Nets? Sure. There's a risk of a blowout happening here, but the Nets were plucky against the Celtics and came back. Monte at 61, I reckon I'll go in a different direction, but he's not terrible there. Sean Kilpatrick at minimum salary, 3,900. He dropped 19 points in the first... Not minimum, 3,900, sorry. He dropped 19 points in the opening night, but that's sort of what he's going to do. He's going to play 22 minutes. He's going to score and not do much else. You can do better. Rod Stuckey, no thanks. What about Joe Harris, who turned in a 30-point performance in opening night? Now, we don't know if Randy Foye is going to play or not, but Harris is a tournament option, definitely, because we saw him fill it up, but it felt really fluky. I'm not sure I'll be all that interested in using him. He did it with these weird defensive numbers. That is not something that he is known for. At small forward, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson was not good in the opener. He played just the 24 minutes and had 8 points, but he's at 3,900. I think you have to have some tournament exposure to him. I don't think you want to use him in cash, but in tournaments, I think you have to have exposure. 4,200 for Bojan Bogdanovic. He took a stack of shots. He could easily lead this team in scoring this season. I think at 4,200, he has to be in play. I know Paul George will be guarding him, and that's a concern. But I think you have to look at Bogdanovic as well. Speaking of Paul George, he's at 9,200. The salary's dropped by $300. He dropped 42 in the first game. He's sort of getting to where you want him to be. He's more of a guy that I target in prices in the 8,000s, not necessarily the 9,000s. He's an okay chance here, but if I'm spending 9,000 plus on a small forward, it's the bloke in Cleveland that we looked at in the last game. Not much other to talk. Good news, Karis LeVert's going to be back in a couple of weeks. I can't wait to see him play. Really excited. The power forwards in this one. Trevor Booker's at 4,900. Really nice opening night for Booker. 29 points. That's exceeding value. Can he do it again? I don't like his chances, to be honest, so I think we'll leave him alone. What about Thad Young in a revenge game? Probably not really a revenge game, but he's playing against his old team. He's at $6,000. That's not enough for me, given how few touches I think he sees offensively. Luis Scola, no thank you. The centers, what about Miles Turner? He only just dropped 61 points in the first game, so an okay performance from him, but he's at 6,900, so his price has risen by $500. At 6,900, is there value in Miles Turner? Can he do it again? Sure, he can do it again. Will he do it again? I don't know if we can get 35 points out of Miles Turner again. 35 fantasy points. He had 61, so it's a big drop-off. But it was a monster performance. Can he go that big again? There's risk associated with, I think a lot of people will chase Miles Turner, and that might not work out all that well in your favour there. Brookie Lopez, there is zero way that you can use him in cash. No chance. He had 11 points in the last game. His price is at 7,700, so it's dropped. Could he be the ultimate contrarian play? Yeah, but let's wait to see if anything more comes out about whatever weird and wonderful system Kenny Atkinson is using. I'll stay away. Justin Hamilton's risen by $200. He's at 4,800. He had a really awesome game. But at 4,800? Seems expensive to me for Justin Hamilton. I think a lot of people will be back on him again, and it could definitely work out, but it just seems a little bit expensive. While Al Jefferson at 4,400, no, I won't be investing in Big Al Jefferson either. All right, the next game up on the slate is the Orlando Magic and the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons, are favored by 4. The total is 198.5 points. Let's talk point guards. My boy Lloyd Alfred Payton was awesome last time out. His price at 5,900. I think that he's a pretty solid play. Now, Detroit is not an easy team to play against defensively. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's a really good defender, and they chuck him on point guards a fair bit. So 5,900 for Lloyd Alfred is probably pushing my friendship on grabbing him. It's the same price he was the other day, but it's a much harder matchup. So I'm not sure that he's a wise investment. Ish Smith at 6,200. Well, if I'm picking between these two guys, I can save $300 and I can get the better player. I would take Payton. I'm not taking Ish Smith there. At 6,200, that's ludicrously high. DJ Augustine at minimum salary. He is a tournament throw-in, just in case Frank Vogel says, you know what, Lord, you're not getting it done. Let's throw DJ in there. I don't think that happens, but it's what can win you a big tournament is a move like that. And we know that if Augustine gets 25 minutes, then he could throw up 30 plus fantasy points at minimum salary. That goes a big way to winning. It's a long shot, though. Beno Udrih, no thanks. Shooting guards, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope played 39 minutes and had 11 points. He's at 5,000. Not keen. No, not keen on him. Evan Fournier at 5,800. It's 800 more for Fournier versus Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I would spend it on Fournier, but I don't love the situation, especially when you could have Caldwell-Pope guarding Fournier, which is not a good moment for him. Mario Hezonja, Reggie Bullock, Mike Binage, they're not worthy options, I don't think. Small forward, Aaron Gordon was good. He's at 5,600. He had 29 in that first game. That's sort of right on value. I think that he feels like a relatively solid-ish cash game play, which is me sort of mincing my words or hedging my bets. But I don't hate him at 5,600 just to lock him in there. And I think you can get 30 points out of him at that position. The small forward, Stan Johnson for Detroit, no thanks. Marcus Morris, he was good. He's at 5,700. He put up 32 points. I don't really have a huge amount of trust in him doing that again, so I'll probably pass on Marcus. And Jeff Green at 4,700. He got the minutes. He didn't have the production, and that's the story of Jeff Green's life. Toby Harris at power forward at 6,200. An okay night, but didn't really contribute in many of the other categories, so that left him at just 26.5 points. He can be better than that. At 6,200 against his old team, I'm on board with Toby at 6,200. I think he's worth a look. Serge Ibaka had a stinker, and his salary rose 700 because he was way underpriced. He only had 24.5 points, but the salary at 4,800 was ludicrous. At 5,500, can Serge Ibaka? Well, you feel like he can't be really worse than what he was. So at 5,500, I'm still okay with using Serge, although many people will be off using him. 4,000 for John Lua. He's a tournament guy to look at. With the centres, Andre Drummond did not live up to expectations. He's at 7,800. I think this matchup is going to be okay for him. There is always a risk with the hacker sort of situation, and maybe Bismack Biyombo bothers him a fair bit. I don't mind using Andre Drummond. I think he's worth considering. Speaking of Biyombo, he is back, so don't expect 41 points out of Nick Vucevic, and that's what he had in the last game. 7,800 for Vucevic is not a good investment. Bismack Biyombo at $5,000. I don't think $5,000 is a good price for me to invest in Biyombo at this point either. Obviously, we're not caring too much about Steven Zimmerman at this moment in his career. The next game we'll take a look at, the Charlotte Hornets and the Miami Heat. Rematch of the playoffs from last season. The Heat, are favoured by 2, and the total is 198. So we're talking about the lowest total on the board. We have a few injury situations. We know that Josh Richardson's out. We know that Wayne Ellington is out for Miami. For Charlotte, we don't know whether Frank Kaminsky is going to play. So when you're on Basketball Monster, you can use our optional what-if scenarios. So you can go on and go to the Charlotte button, click it and go, okay, how does the usage change? How do the minutes change? How do we project it changes if Frank Kaminsky is out? So you go and have a look at that. If you're a member of Basketball Monster, which again I highly recommend. At point guard, Kemba is at 7,900. He was all right in the last game, but low pace means I'll stay away from him here. Goran Dragic at 6,800. I'm going to say the same thing for him. It's a good matchup going against Kemba, but the minutes not being in 35 is worrisome, plus the low pace. I don't think either of those guys are appealing. Tyler Johnson had 30 in 28 minutes at 4,600. Yeah, you should be looking at Tyler Johnson and considering to use him. Other point guards, Ramon Sessions, we're obviously not getting involved with him. Dale Wade is at 4,500. He had 21 points in the last game. He was really bad, but he played 34 minutes. And at 4,500, I think that you can use Dale Waiters and get yourself big names in. Get your LeBron into your lineup. Because Waiters at 4,500, I think the minutes are going to be there. And he just has to have a mediocre game, not even a good game. A mediocre game, and he could give you 25 or 26, and that's really good value. So he's worth a look. 6,200 for Nick Batum. I think that's okay, but I don't like the matchup. So I'll steer off Nick Batum here. Marco Bellinelli, Rod Magruder. Nah. Imagine you use Rod Magruder and your lineup came up and won. That'd be huge. I don't know why. Justice Winslow, 4,900. He had 35 in his opening night in 34 minutes. I think if we expect 35 from Justice Winslow again, we're probably going to be let down. But he looked good. I just would be expecting a bit of a drop-off for him. Mick Kidd-Gilchrist, 5,600 for Mick. He dropped 44 in the opener, and he was fantastic. I feel more confident in him being able to repeat something closer to it than what Winslow did. But you're also spending an extra $700 on Kidd-Gilchrist. Is he someone that I'm looking at here? Probably not. Luke Babbitt, minimum salary, maybe he gets the start, but he started and then he played less minutes than James Johnson. Willie Reed's in the mix, maybe Derek Williams gets back in, maybe Josh McRoberts plays. All I'm saying is Luke Babbitt we don't want to use. Same with James Johnson, who did have 22 or 21 and a half in that opening night game, and at 3,900, that's okay, but I'm not relying upon that to happen again. At power forward, Marv Williams had 20. A lot of people coming at me saying, why is the Marvin Williams hate still there? Do I hate him? I just don't think he's that good, and last year's performances just fell out of his ass, and there they were. And he continued, so more power to him. 5,100 for Marv. Yeah, I think that's a worthwhile investment at 5,100. I'm okay with using him there. There is definite room for disappointment, and he really, really struggled against the Heat in the playoffs, so you must take that into consideration. He was abominable in that series. So take that into consideration. So he's worth it. I probably wouldn't use him myself, and there's no bias coming in there. Frank the Tank at 3,900. If he plays and we go, you know what, there's no restriction, I don't hate it. It's clearly not a cash game situation. It is a tournament-only situation. But at 3,900, that limits what Marvin can do as well. But it's worth looking at. The centers. Hassan Whiteside, he was great against Charlotte in the playoffs. He's at 8,500. I think he's fine to use. He had 43 in the first game. He's definitely fine to use. The other ones, the centers in Charlotte, what happens with Cody Zeller? He had 23 in 14 minutes. Does Roy Hibbert get 32 minutes again? I think that Zeller's minutes go up. I think that Hibbert's come down, especially if Kaminsky is playing. So 39 for Hibbert, sure. Tournament, let's see what happens. No faith to use him in a cash. Zeller at 4,600, not just yet. They can be left alone. Willie Reed, he had 21 points at 3,900. That's interesting. Not enough to use though, but he's definitely a name to keep an eye on, Will Reed, because he does put up some big numbers at times, even in limited playing time. That sunlight has moved right into the logo of that Kings jersey. I need to adjust my setup here, obviously. Again, back to the drawing board. The next game, the Phoenix Suns and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Let's talk about point guards. Let's talk about Russ Westbrook, who is still at $12,000. Now, he put up 58. It's a good performance. The Suns, the pace is going to be through the roof here. If we look at what the over-under is 209 and the Thunder are favored by 9. 12,000 for Russ. I feel more confident using him in this one than I did versus the Sixers. I guess it depends on if you've used a guy like Dion Waiters or some other cheaper point guards or other positions around. You can afford Russ. I think that he's definitely worth looking at that price. It is expensive though, so it can be tough. The other point guards, Bledsoe at 7,400. Until I see him just running things, I'm not going to be on him at that price. And in preseason, he definitely wasn't running things. It was all going through Devin Booker. Tyler Ulis in the rotation and Semaj Kristen, two rookies backing or battling each other in the backup roles. No thanks. Shooting guards, Vic Oladipo at 7,000. Nobody is going to be on Vic Oladipo. It is a really good matchup for him. He was abysmal in the opener. No one is going to be on him. I think that you could do worse than putting him into a tournament lineup, because if he goes off, he's going to be at like 2%, 3% owned, I reckon. It's not going to be very high. Devin Booker at 6,100. He only played 25 in the first game. There was foul trouble in that one. I think he'll be better. I know he'll be better. He put up 21 points at 6,100. He's sort of on my radar, but not really. 58 for Brandon Knight. No, he just didn't see the court enough for me to get interested in. Small forwards, TJ Warren at 46. I don't mind Warren at 4,600. He dropped 26 points in the opener in 30 minutes. They gave him plenty of playing time. He can definitely fill it up. I like TJ Warren at that salary. Andre Robertson, he had 20, but I don't really have much faith in that happening again. And Kyle Singler's really bad. Power forwards, Enes Kanter is at 5,300, just 35 for him in 24 minutes, a huge performance. This is what Enes Kanter does. In fact, over his last 5 games, stretching back to last season, Enes Kanter, per 36 minutes, he's averaging 53 FanDuel points. At 5,300, it's tremendous value. I think you really got to look at him. And the Suns front court, Jared Dudley, if Jared Dudley has to match up against him, it is going to be a bloodbath. I know Kanter's not a good defender, but on the offensive end, it is going to be a bloodbath. And maybe they can throw Alex Len in there. It's still going to be a bloodbath. Kanter can really tear these guys open. Power forwards, Jared Dudley, no. 3,800 for him, no thanks. Sabonis, Ilyasova, Marquise Chris. These are all low price gamble guys, but they're all above 4,000, and I don't think that I want to be investing in any of them. If I want to throw one guy into a tournament, it's probably Chris, but yeah, there's definitely no cash game reliability there. And Dragon Bender, same story. Centers, Steve Adams, get on him again. He's only at 4,800. His price went up by $100 at 4,800. I'm all in on Steve Adams at that price. Love using him there. Tyson Chandler and Alex Len, I'll say a big no thanks to both of those guys. The next game up on the slate, we've got the Houston Rockets and the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks are favored by 2. The total is 221.5. That is exactly what you want to see as a fantasy player. No Pat Beverly, no Devin Harris, obviously coming into this one. The point guards, Darren Williams, he played a lot in that first game and he had 35 points, but he's at 6,400. He's gone up by 4,000. No, not. He's gone up by 400. and that makes him not appealing to me. So no thanks for Darren Williams. On the Houston side of things, there's no point guards we're really interested in. Tyler Ennis. What about JJ Barea? He played 39 minutes and had 32 points. His price is at $5,100, so it's risen by $400. I don't think that Seth Curry is going to foul out in 16 minutes again. I don't think that Seth Curry is going to play JJ Barea is going to play 39 minutes again. It means to me that no, I don't want to invest in JJ Barea here. Shooting guard. Jim. He's at 11,300. If you're spending up at shooting guard, it's obviously Harden. You can get 60 out of him pretty comfortably, and it could easily happen again. I like building lineups around James Harden. On the Dallas side of things, 5,100 for Wes Matthews. He inspires no confidence in me. I would rather take the 5,200 on his opposite number, Eric Gordon. Matthews did have more fantasy points than Gordon. It was fueled by 3 steals, but I think that I feel more comfortable using Eric Gordon, and that's a sad state of affairs at this point. KJ McDaniels, not really. Nicholas Brasino, no. Small forwards, the pencil. He's at 5,100. He had a nice 28-point outing in the opening. He looked solid. He could always throw up a stinker, but I like the pencil at 5,100. That is not a big amount of money to shell out. Justin Anderson at small forward, no. 5,400 for Trevor Ariza. Maybe I'll look at Trevor Ariza in January when he starts getting going, as he does every year. And Corey Brewer is not really interesting. Dwight Powell at 3,700. Yeah, maybe I could consider Dwight Powell if they start going small again. Tournaments only, but definitely not a high priority guy. Ryan Anderson at 6,300 is too high for me. He just doesn't do enough in the other categories to really justify that price tag, and it's surely not a cash game setting for him in any. You hope that he goes out there and bangs in 8 threes and gets hot, and that means that he works in tournaments, but he doesn't really work in cash games. So Rhino, unfortunately not. Dirk's at 7,100. I like Dirk at 7,100. He had 41 in the opener. He probably won't play 38 minutes again. I can almost guarantee he won't. But the high pace, Dirk playing some center, I like Dirk at 71. It's definitely not a stay away. At center, Clint Capella is only at 4,700. Now his salary has risen by $500, but I think that the Capella should be pretty okay at 47. I think that he can comfortably get 25 points. If there weren't other center options that I like Steve Adams, then Capella would be someone that I would consider. Bogut, 4,200, didn't play enough minutes. Maybe he gets on the court, but the high pace might be an issue for him. But I still think that he's a worthy tournament guy. And Nene at 4,000. Yeah, you know what? Nene at 4,000. It depends what D'Antoni's going to do. I'm not trusting Nene, though. I don't think anyone should really trust Nene at this point in his career, although Mike D'Antoni seems to think that he can. The next game, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Utah Jazz. The Jazz back at home. The Jazz are favored by 8.5. The total is 201.5 points. We've got a high-paced team and a slow-paced team, so we get the over-under in the middle there. At point guard, Georgie Hill was fantastic. He's at 6,100. I like using him again. He's obviously going to be getting a ton of usage with Gordo Hayward out, so he's worth looking at. Now, we don't know if Derek Favors is going to play at this point. Is questionable, but I would lean to yes, and yes with limited minutes. So keep an eye on him. Georgie Hill is a good guy to look at. D'Angelo Russell's at 6,400. He had a decent opener. I think he can be better, but this is not a good opportunity against the Jazz. Really, 6,400 is not something I'm overly keen about spending 6,400 on Russell. I would take the 300 less and take George Hill. Backup point guard, Shelvin Mack. Dante Exum's not in the rotation, really. Mack, no. Shooting guards, Rod Hood at 5,700. Blew up in the first game. It's not a fluke. He is really good. 5,700, I'm all aboard with Rod. Shooting guards, Jordan Clarkson. Only the 25 minutes, which was disappointing at 5,800. I don't think you can rely upon him, so no thank you. Nick Young, the starter. Minimum salary, maybe, but he wasn't really good either, so I don't think he's worth much investment. And Lou Williams at 4,600 is definitely not something I want to be involved in. Lou Deng at 5,000 with the small forwards. Yeah, no. Brandon Ingram at 3,900. I'll say no to that as well. But what about Joe Johnson? He's at 5,600. He dropped 38 in the opener. I think that he is worth considering at that price. It's a good matchup for him. He's not going to be an 80% shooter. I think we understand that. But at 5,600, I feel okay with Joe Johnson getting me 27 points. I think that he's a possibility to that. I don't hate him as a cash game option. Power forwards. Trey Lyles, terrible in the opener. 3,800 for him. I think that's a definite tournament guy to look at. I don't think that he plays 18 minutes again. Boris Diaw was dreadful. And if Favors doesn't go, people will be scared off Trey Lyles. So I do think that you should be looking at that from a tournament point of view, going, people aren't going to want Trey Lyles here. If Favors is out, let's throw him in. He's 3,800. He could drop 29 or 30 in 27 minutes. That could happen. He has to be looked at. So you got to consider him. Favors, I wouldn't want to use him if he plays in his first game back, so that's not ideal. Julius Randle is at 6,400. He had a great opening night. Not a good matchup, not for me. Larry Nance, same thing. Rudy Gobert at 7,000. Significant price rise, $800 up. Good matchup. No Favors means I think if there was no Favors, I think we look at Gobert. Even if Favors plays at 7,000, I think that Gobert is a pretty decent investment. Although there are better center options on the board, enabling you to go for say Westbrook or Harden, or maybe both if you've got enough balls to go that big and fill it in with a lot of minimum players after that. Tim Mozgov at 4,000. He returned value in only 22 minutes in the opener, so a good performance from him. Does he do it again? It's not a great situation going up against Gobert, but at 4,000 in a tournament, you want to shave up those extra $100, $500, $600. I think that you should be considering Tim Mozgov. We're not obviously considering if it's a Zubac or Tariq Black at this point. The last match of the night is one where I think a lot of people are going to be interested, and that is the Golden State Warriors and the New Orleans Pelicans. Number one, they want to see how the Warriors respond. The Warriors are favored by 10. The total is 219.5. So we're talking about a big spread and a big total. The big spread is the concern, obviously, here if the game is a blowout. And you would imagine the Warriors are going to want to come out pretty pumped. I love Tim Frazier here at 5,300. He dropped 41 in the opener. The more important thing to me is he played 37 minutes. Love getting on him at that price. Steph at 9,000, risky, just with the blowout factor, but I think you can use Steph at 9,000. He's torched New Orleans before. He's put up some huge numbers against them. He could easily go for 55 or 60 in this one, and 9,000 is not a big amount for Steph. I like. In fact, his last 3 games against the Pelicans, he's averaged 60 points. He's worth looking at. Sean Livingston and Langston Galloway we're not caring about. Shooting guards, Klay Thompson at 6,100. People will be off him. I'd be more interested if he was at 5,500, so probably not for me. Etuan Moore at 45. Tournament play. I think that he can have a bounce-back game from what he had in the first one. He's obviously not priced very highly salary-wise. Bud Hield was terrible in the opener. No. Ian Clark, Pat McCaw. No. Small forward Solomon Hill, he registered 5 points. He can be better than that, but I want him at minimum salary, not at 4,000, so leave him alone. Kevin Durant's at 9,300. I'd rather take LeBron at that small forward spot. 9,300. Yeah, look, Durant could easily get that value, but the blowout factor is a little bit of a risk there for him, so not all that interested. Lance is not bad at 4,100. I'd prefer him at minimum, but 4,100, he played a lot of minutes. It didn't convert into much, but maybe in a bit of a higher-paced game, he looks a bit better. We'll see. Andre Iguodala, no, he's not really a fantasy guy. 4,000 for Terrence Jones. He was terrible in the opener. Yeah, tournament, maybe you throw him into, but you should have zero faith in him in a cash game setting. Dave West, no. Tone Davis, he dropped 96 in the first game. That's probably not going to happen again. He's at 10,800. Fine, though. If you want to go and use him, I think that you can be pretty confident you'll get 50 out of Anthony Davis. Just don't expect 96 again. I don't think that's fair to expect that sort of output in every game. Draymond at 8,400, he was sneakily really good. 51 points in the opener. And at 8,400, that's not a bad salary for Draymond. Probably not where I'm looking. But if you want to go away from Davis and get Draymond in there, save yourself $2,500. Draymond is an option. And the centers. Yeah, cool. Do I need to talk about Zaza Pachulia, Omar Ashik, and Alexia Jinsa? I didn't think so. All right, that is all of the games done for Friday. Let's look at the picks of the day now. FanDuel. We've got Timmy Frazier at 53 and Steph Curry at 9,000. I don't really like any cheap point guards there. Shooting guards. Dion Waiters 45, Rod Hood 57, and Jim Harden at 11,300. And the small forwards, TJ Warren 46, the pencil Harrison Barnes at 5,100, and LeBron James at 9,900. With the power forwards, Trey Lyles at 38, with a few caveats obviously. Enes Kanter at 53 and Anthony Davis at 10,800. And the centers, Steven Adams at 4,800, Jonas Valanciunas at 6,000, and Hassan Whiteside at 8,500. Over to DraftKings, obviously different scoring system, different salaries. I like Ish Smith over there at 4,900. I think he works well under that system. Georgie Hill at 55 is a good buy, and 11,800 for Russ is not bad over there too. Waiters and Hood at 41 and 6,200 are both interesting to me, and Jim Harden not quite as appealing with the DraftKings situation. At small forward, 4,200 for Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. It's a tournament punt option, but I think that he's worth looking at. Toby Harris at 56 and Paulie George at 8,400. A really appealing price for Paul George over on DraftKings. At power forward, John Lua at 3,300. That's a really low price. Tournament option there. Dirk at 6,000 I love, and LeBron at 9,400. And the centers, Justin Hamilton at minimum salary, not quite, 3,500. That's really cheap compared to where he was on FanDuel as well. That's great for Hamilton, so he's worth a punt. And 7,900 for Andre Drummond. We're done. That is the end of today's podcast, guys. Remember, if you get a chance, head across and leave a review. It helps out tremendously. You can buy a t-shirt to support the show as well. Watch the show on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Watch it. Listen to it. Download the podcast. Even if you're not going to listen to it, just download every episode. It helps get the numbers up, which is always awesome. Thank you to everyone who's helped support the podcast. Hopefully you guys have done well so far in your DFS and your seasonal leagues. We are done. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Isaiah Thomas.